It's been a week since Will Smith's so-called slap heard round the world, but the impact is still unfolding and questions still remain. Dr. Sue Varma is a board-certified psychiatrist and a fellow at the American Psychiatric Association. Thanks for being here tonight to kind of dig into the psychology behind it. We'll preface it with the fact that you have not treated Will Smith or Chris Rock, but we're still interested to know some of the psychology behind this. We all saw what went down on that video. We saw Will Smith initially laughing, and then we saw Jada's face. And then it was like a switch flipped, and he stormed up and assaulted Chris Rock. So what did you make of it all from a psychological point of view, flying into that rage so quickly?
Yes. And, one thing I want to say is that as a psychiatrist, my role whenever I see these things is to not judge, but to understand where a person is coming from. So I want to say that while I'm not taking any sides here and I'm not saying one person was right or one person was wrong, my assessment of this is I do think that Will Smith initially saw this as humorous. Look, he's in entertainment. He's been in comedy. A-list actor. This is not a world that's unfamiliar to him. And while the Oscars are a family night, we do expect that some people are supposed to get roasted. However, thinking about who's getting roasted here, which is his wife, and it's about a medical condition, I think that at some point when he saw her face and he saw her facial expression, he took the cue from her that the line has been crossed and something had to be done about it. Now, whether or not that was communicated, we know that there was no verbal communication, but I do think that our society puts so much emphasis on men protecting women, which I believe absolutely they should. But this has given rise to these conversations about toxic masculinity and how can we protect people, and is violence the answer? And that's really what's concerning to all of us in this situation.
And then when he went back and he was kind of shouting obscenities at Chris Rock, even then it was almost in a proprietary role, right? He said, "Get my wife's name," as if, she was kind of taken out of the picture. She has the name. It was almost like a sense of honor.
Yes. And when we talk about toxic masculinity, that's what we're talking about, where men are taught to suppress emotions except for anger. And they're supposed to wear their anger as a badge of honor. And we look at anger, it's actually considered the good thing. The right thing is to get angry, to be hard, to act like a man, to defend the honor of your woman. But we know that you can defend honor in so many ways. And to look at the context of what that night was about, which was about a greater evening, coming together in person after 2 years, celebrating a lot of people, diversity, women, ethnic minorities in media. So it was such a big night, not to mention his own win that was supposed to come down the line. So absolutely looking at women as property is a big part of this. And where is that fine line where you're defending somebody and respecting them and then crossing the boundary into aggression and violence?
And, in Will Smith's autobiography, he talks about growing up in a household where his father abused his mother, his inability to protect his mother and women in his life. Does that play a role in all of this?
It can, but just because somebody is predisposed to violence doesn't mean that they're going to be, predestined to it. And that's really important, that there are a lot of people who have grown up in homes where they have seen violence as a way of settling battles, as a way of communicating, as a way of expressing emotions, because like I said, anger and being hardened is some of the only ways that some men know how to communicate. But I think what happens here is, in this case is, an impulsive, like almost a decision is made, not even on a cortical higher order level. One of the beauties of being human is that we do have higher order thinking where we can suppress emotions and we can override them. We can override our rage. We may want to, quote unquote, kill somebody. You may want to smack them in the face. You want to punch them. But we teach our kids, use your words. You can say, hey man, you've crossed the line. We're going to talk about this. I want to punch you in the face. And that's very different than actually carrying it out. So just because we saw violence doesn't mean that we have to act on it as an adult.
Right. There are plenty of people who grew up in similar circumstances who are not assaulting people on a stage. What do you make of his apology? He could have apologized to Chris Rock when he was apologizing to everyone else on that stage about an hour later. He did eventually issue an apology, a written statement on social media. So credit where credit's due. But what do you make of him taking so long to apologize to the person he actually assaulted?
I think that one thing we always have to understand that there's so much more to the story. We don't know the interpersonal dynamics of the relationship between the two partners. We don't know what it meant to stand up and defend, right? We want to regroup. Couples want to get back together and say, what's going on? What kind of a statement should I issue? Oh my God, am I going to be thrown out of the theater? Because we do know that he was asked to leave and didn't. So there are ramifications, I think, that are so much, bigger, that are concrete, that could affect his career, that could affect a lot of things. So I don't know whether the apology or if he was even prepared at that that time to make this statement. But I do say better late than never when it comes to an apology. And I have to say, I was touched. As much I was upset and angered to see the slap, that all of us were upset to see this, the apology did strike a chord in me. To, a person has to have remorse, and to me this means that you're accountable for your actions, you're taking responsibility, you have a degree of self-awareness, and you recognize that you hurt a lot of people in this. And I think that's the best that we can hope for. I think that in the gesture of resignation there was some of that, and it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. Look, we're all human, we're all evolving, we're all growing. We've gone through a miserable 2 years. A lot of people are acting crazy. They're acting a fool, so to speak, right now on planes everywhere. So I think we need to understand that and give some credit for that apology, because I think it humanizes them and shows a degree of humility instead of the entitlement that we saw on both parties' nights that night. And I do have to say, the humor in the Oscars, something's got to be done about it. We cannot make fun of a woman's appearance. That was very troubling to me, especially given the medical condition.
All right, Dr. Varma, thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. Still
My
ahead
pleasure.
on Prime. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.